ॐ तवगतामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीतं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गणन्ति भूरिदा जनाः. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are raised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We're on the chapter A Day at Dakshineshwar. It is Saturday, April 5th, 1884. And we're at the bottom of page 416. We stopped last time. I'll read the last couple of paragraphs. Sri Ramakrishna is talking to a devotee by the name of Ramakrishna. He was someone, I guess we could say, who liked his path of Jnana Yoga. He was more of a traditional type of Hindu devotee. Thakur had some like that. His captain and others a little more orthodox, and he liked his path of knowledge. So Sri Ramakrishna is talking to him, and he does something that he often does. Before he gives some teaching, he'll say, according to the Jnanis, or according to Vedanta, or according to the Puranas, according to the path of devotion. That means that he's saying something that will appeal to a particular person. He's not exactly disavowing it. It's not like he's saying that the Jnanis say this, I don't necessarily subscribe to this, but the Jnanis say this. He's not necessarily endorsing it. He's simply saying that this kind of belongs to that path of knowledge. This belongs to the path of devotion. He accepted all of them. He had his different attitudes and different moods at different times, but there's a tendency nowadays to try to pigeonhole Sri Ramakrishna, say that he was really this or really that, or he really followed this point of view. I won't say that there's no value in that, but to me, he appreciated every point of view. He appreciated all of the traditional paths, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, especially these two. And he appreciated the attitude of the sincere devotees who were dualists, who were qualified non-dualists, and also the Jnanis who were non-dualists. He appreciated all of them. Did he have any special likes and dislikes? I think so. I mean, we know that he liked to look upon God as mother. That means to include the Saguna Brahman along with Nirguna Brahman, to include the power, Shakti power to create and to preserve and uphold the universe and everything, and that devotional attitude, and this idea that everything we see is a manifestation of the divine. But he appreciated all of the other points of view. Not that he was antagonistic to any, but here it's a very good example where he'd start one statement according to the Puranas and the next one according to Vedanta. So we read this last time. I'll just go through it quickly. According to the Puranas, the Bhakta and Bhagavan are two separate entities. I am one and you are another. Now, for Sri Ramakrishna, everything was a question of attitude. Attitude and not fact. Is it a fact that we're separate? Is it a fact that we're one? It is an attitude. That for him, the only fact or true ultimate truth was experience and realization in Brahman itself. So he always liked, of course, Hanuman's attitude. It depends. You're asking me, what is my attitude? It depends how I look upon myself at the time. If I feel that I am the self, then there's oneness. If I feel I'm the body, there's separation, the soul, that you're the whole and I'm the part, that type of idea. So it says, according to the Puranas, the Bhakta and Bhagavan are two separate entities. I am one and you are another. The body is a plate, as it were, containing the water of mind, intelligence, and ego. Brahman is like the sun. It is reflected in the water. Therefore, the devotees see the divine form. Now, this illustration is one used by Sri Ramakrishna over and over and over again without any preface, without according to the Puranas or anything. So we can say that he likes this illustration and he uses it very much. He finds it very useful, even though he won't emphasize this idea that I am one and you are another. He liked this, we can have that relationship, but he liked this idea of everything ends in oneness. He used to use that type of language. Then he says, according to the Vedanta, Brahman alone is real and all else is Maya, dreamlike and unsubstantial. Now, this is again, he knows for a certain type of devotee with a certain type of mood and attitude that this will be their path. It's fine. It's not necessarily what he likes, because very often he'll say, I don't like to call this world unreal as a dream. Now, it's not the same as saying those who say this world is unreal like a dream are being misled, that this is a wrong conception. He never says that. As a personal preference, his own spiritual attitude was that he preferred to look at everything as a manifestation of the Divine Mother. So he says, according to the Vedanta, Brahman alone is real and all else is Maya. Now, we may say, dreamlike and unsubstantial. We may say that just like the first one, I am one and you are another, he won't emphasize this distinction. And the second one, that everything is Maya, dreamlike and unsubstantial, he doesn't emphasize that either. But both illustrations he likes. This is the interesting thing, because his ego, like a stick, lies across the ocean of Satchidananda, that this is also something that he uses constantly. These two are almost his two favorite illustrations, and both fit in very well with the path of knowledge and with the path of devotion. That's the interesting thing about this. He didn't care about these labels the way we get obsessed with these things a little bit. Then he says, listen to what I'm saying. When the ego is taken away, there remains only one undivided ocean of Satchidananda. Now, both of these illustrations emphasize the fact that this ego is something unsubstantial. In the first, it's a reflection. It's a reflection of that sun. In the second, it's a stick on water. That stick can be removed, or the stick can become so thin it becomes like a line on water. So in both of them, the key thing is that this ego is an obstruction, and either it's something false or it's reflection, but it has no independent substance to it. Then he says, but as long as the stick of ego remains, there is an appearance of two. So the devotee likes to believe that there are two. The jnani has to accept the fact that there's an appearance of two. Here is one part of the water, and there another part. Attaining the knowledge of Brahman, one is established in samadhi. Then the ego is effaced. Now, does one then have the attitude of oneness? No. There's only oneness. There's no one to have an attitude. Then the salt dollars has become one with the ocean at that point. But Shankaracharya retained the ego of knowledge in order to teach men. This is another one of Sri Ramakrishna's important doctrines, that this ego is something that will remain even after the highest type of realization. But it'll be transformed. He calls it the ripe ego. It can't bind, but it's necessary to live in the world. Ego is nothing but a conception of ourselves. There's nothing else. If we want to know what our own particular ego is like, we have to ask ourselves, what do I mean when I refer to myself? What comes to my mind? There's a person comes to mind, personality comes to mind, all of my attitudes and my desires and everything comes to mind. That's who I am. That's my ego. It's changeable. And we're trying to do that. We're trying to ripen it, and we're trying to convert it, and we're trying to superimpose something on top of it. This arop idea that I want to get rid of this identification with the body, so I superimpose this idea of a relationship, bhava, that I'm a child of God. I keep telling myself. That means that I'm converting this ego into something spiritual, spiritualizing it, and it'll become fainter and fainter For the jnani, it'll disappear in the state of samadhi. For the devotee, it'll disappear in the forgetfulness of self. We have that nice example that Swamiji, his ego became so large that it could burst through the net of Maya. At Nagmahashai, his ego became so tiny that it could, like a little mosquito, could fly through the meshes of Maya. So two different ways of attaining realization by converting this ego. And devotee ego of the servant type is also a big, strong ego. I'm a servant of God. I can do anything. But it'll completely destroy this other small type of ego that's only interested in selfish things. So this is the way Sri Ramakrishna talks about this very highly sophisticated and very much in line with psychology and everything, his concept of ego. This is really Freud's conception of ego. The image, it's simply an image of oneself. Nothing that can't be changed, and but it's the source of bondage when it's identified with lower things, and the source of freedom and liberation when we can connected with something divine and form that relationship. So he says, Shankaracharya retained the ego of knowledge in order to teach men. Now there's a long footnote here. The ego illumined and purified by the knowledge of God, following the method of discrimination, the jnani in samadhi merges his ego in Brahman. Now, sometimes we'll say merges the mind in Brahman. There's not a big difference. This is just a question of language with us. Thereafter, he may come down to the relative plane with an appearance of individuality, but even then he was always conscious of his identity with the Brahman. Now, to be conscious of my identity with the Brahman means that's my ego. I am Brahman. That's also an ego, but it's a perfectly ripe ego. This is Thakur's the distinction that he makes. This is not the ego that can cause any harm. This apparent ego is called the ego of knowledge. A bhakta, following the path of love, realizes his eternal relationship with God. He too keeps an appearance of individuality on the relative plane. This ego has none of the characteristics of the worldly ego and is called the ego of devotion. The two egos here described refer to the same state of realization. Now, what Thakur says is that after coming down from that highest experience and that highest oneness and realization, that the type of the ego that will reemerge depends on our spiritual attitude, our spiritual path, not necessarily on that highest experience. That highest experience is beyond everything. If it's really nirvikalpa samadhi, but what takes us there and what greets us when the mind comes down, we go back into our own mind, but it's somehow transformed. But we don't become different people. All of the samskaras that we had before keep the same form. They don't have the binding power at all. But say Sri Ramakrishna, same sweet childlike nature, same sense of humor. It's not like he's unrecognizable after that highest type of experience. The jnani is not going to go and have samadhi and come back and sing and dance. The devotee is not going to go back and say, everything's a dream. So the mind is still operative somehow, even though every trace of bondage is removed from it. This is why the very helpful illustration when Thakur talks about the burnt string, that you have a string and it has little curves and everything, and you put it on, set it on fire, and it turns into just little dust. What do we call it? Ashes, little ashes. It'll have the same shape as the string. It'll look like the string. Only if you blow on it, the whole thing goes away. And it can't be used to tie anything. So that's all gone. But the same personality, after undergoing some type of transformation, will be there. And the same type of one goes in as a lover of the Divine Mother will come out. That'll be the main thought. When Thakur had his first realization of Mother Kali, we don't know what was going on in his mind at that time. Was he having visions of Mother Kali? It sounds like he's lost all outer consciousness. He's merged in an ocean of consciousness and everything. But first words out of his mouth are "ma, ma, ma," mother, mother, mother. Afterwards, so somehow, even if the mind goes beyond the form, it'll come back down. It'll be colored by that same the earlier mind, right? I mean, it just seems
this has something to do with what Krishna says. I appear to the devotee in the way he worships me.
Yo yam 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 yatanum tanum. That form in which one? Yeah, I make a shraddha form, and I reveal myself in that. Yeah, this is always that question: is it subjective? Is it objective? Is God revealing Himself or herself to us that way, or is this the container of our mind is scooping the water in that form? A cooling power of devotion is making the ocean form that particular type of block of ice and everything.
This mental apparatus without its samskaras is still there.
Still there, yeah. But transformed, not eliminated, but transformed somehow. So Shankaracharya naturally, he'll keep the ego of knowledge. That was the driving force behind his realizations. He has his devotion, of course, also. And for Sri Ramakrishna, that love of Divine Mother will still be there. Yeah. Yeah.
Thakur also used to radiate certain kind of energy to the people who was watching him while coming back from Samadhi. So that will also transform the other people who are associated.
That that's hard to say. It's really hard to say. When Thakur went into Samadhi, sometimes people got up and left. Even Narendra. It's like, oh, how long will he be here? Let me go talk to Hazra and have a smoke. Yeah. How many people appreciated it? That one devotee from Konagar, he's getting up ready to leave. Somebody says, sit down. This is Samadhi. Don't you know? So people have to be a little bit sensitive to these things. But that particular, will anybody know? That one really has to be highly, highly sensitive to be able to feel, oh, now his mind is merged in Shiva, or mind is merged in Divine Mother. That'll be very hard to say that anybody can do that. But certainly it'll be a transformative experience for anybody to see that the state of Samadhi is not something written in old books. Here is a living human being who experiences this day after day. And certainly that'll be a tremendous thing for anybody to witness that. So Shankaracharya retained the ego of knowledge in order to teach men, to Pran Krishna. But there are signs that distinguish the man of knowledge. Now, this also I find very, very interesting. You'll see, some people think they have knowledge. What are the characteristics of knowledge? A jnani cannot injure anybody. He becomes like a child. If a steel sword touches the philosopher's stone, it is transformed into gold. Now, this is another illustration. It has the same form. It looks the same. Only it can't cut. It can't be used as a weapon anymore. But it'll have the same form. That means some skaras are still there. Gold can never cut. It may seem from the outside that a jnani also has anger or egotism, but in reality, he has no such thing. Then we get the string illustration. From a distance, a burned string lying on the ground may look like a real one, but if you come near and blow at it, it disappears altogether. The anger and egotism of a jnani are mere appearances. They are not real. Now, the thing that I find interesting is that these characteristics of the jnani are same characteristics of the bhakta. Yeah.
Bhakta will also have jnana.
Yeah. And the characteristics of the bhakta, we read in chapter 12 of the Gita, they're the characteristics of the Sthita Prajna. Yeah. So these are a little bit false distinctions that we make. That no one is such a jnani that they're absolutely dry and they're not interested in the world. In Gita, this is also two times, maybe more, we have this expression, engaged in the welfare of all beings. Sarva bhuta hite rataha. Both times it refers to the jnani. Now we think the jnani traditionally goes into the forest cave, doesn't remove from society and everything. He's the one engaged in the welfare of all beings. Now, maybe it's just setting an example, they're teaching, not running hospitals necessarily, but still. So we have to really take an integrated view of all of this. Jnana and bhakti, they're not so different. The attitude is a little different, but this transformation will make the jnani a loving person, will make the bhakta a sthita prajna, somebody who's not affected, not ups and downs and things. The world is a little distant from. So we see how these things can be falsely separated into separate categories when there's some living relationship.
Though the paths appear different, the result of genuine spiritual experience will be more or less.
Even we look at the today's Buddha Purnima. Yeah. So we look at the path of some of the Buddhists who have no interest whatsoever in any personal God or soul or anything like that. They'll have their satori, they'll have their enlightenment and everything, and they'll come back. They'll be perfectly free souls, hardly distinguishable from any other God-realized soul. What we call God-realized or self-realized. So that transformation that takes place, coming back, a little bit dependent on our spiritual mood and everything, but on the other hand, some type of transformation seems to be universal. And all spiritual paths will find they become loving people. Why loving? Because if there's no ego, we can't love other people because this selfish ego. If that's eliminated naturally, they'll love everyone. And to have that kindness and compassion and fellow feeling and the feeling of oneness with everybody, all of these things are there. If you read the descriptions of satori, the term in Zen Buddhism for enlightenment, there's all these same things of the jnani and this love of all people and this feeling of the eternal and no attachment to anything. All these things will be there. Only not this devotion to personal God. That'll be the main distinction. Of course, it may come in the form of this reverence for the figure of Buddha himself. That may also be there. So now, even for the jnani, he'll compare him to a child. This is another thing that we find, that childlike attitude, because what is the difference between a child and an adult? Self-consciousness, not self-consciousness in the sense of realization, but what will people think, and that children don't have that. They have that naturalness and that innocence. There's the main difference, I think. Yeah. And so these God-realized souls, they're like that. It's Ramakrishna. What did he care what anybody thought? Somebody once said something to him, and he said, well, what do I care? I can dance naked in front of 1,000 women. I can stare at myself in a mirror all day long. What do I care what anybody thinks? So free from that. This we grow up and we're so concerned about public opinion and appearance and everything. So they're free from that. A child is no attachment. He makes a playhouse, and if anyone touches it, he will jump about and cry. The next moment, he himself will break it. It's like the Divine Mother creating this universe. They use this example that this lila, that God must be like a child to jest and fun to create this universe and then get rid of it, destroy it. He makes a playhouse, and if anyone touches it, he will jump about and cry. The next moment, he himself will break it. This moment, he may be very attached to his cloth. He says, my daddy has given it to me. I won't part with it. But the next moment, you can cajole him away from it with a toy. He will go away with you, leaving the cloth behind. These are the characteristics of a jnani. Perhaps he has many luxuries at home, couch, chairs, paintings, and equipage, but any day he may leave all these and go off to Benares. Now, we use this term jnani in two different senses. One, somebody following the path of knowledge. We can say is a jnani. So sometimes Thakur would say, the jnanis are dry people, or they sit with their legs crossed and twirling their mustache and say, now ask me a question. He's not talking about this, someone who God-realized, self-realized soul through the path of knowledge, someone following that with maybe a little bit of ego. Or the jnani can mean somebody who's attained the highest type of knowledge. It can be used in both senses. Here, Sri Ramakrishna, he seems to be talking about the jnani as the God-realized soul. But there'll be a slight higher distinction when he says it to the Vijnani, which will come next. To me, this sounds like the Vijnani. But he's still going to make a little distinction after this. So anyhow, the jnani, we see, can be a householder. He may have couch, chairs, paintings, all these other things, but he may leave all of these and go off to Benares. There were several of these jnani pandits who were householders also, who did. They left and went off to Benares after meeting Sri Ramakrishna under the influence of him. Yeah. Who was it who did it? Narayan Shastri, maybe there's one other also. Shashadhar, maybe. Anyhow, yeah. That they tried to find them. They'd heard they went to Benares. People didn't see them again. Yeah, inspired by Sri Ramakrishna. One of greatest sadhus of our order was a householder, and our Swami Jagadananda, Swami Jagadananda, who translated the great master, the Leela Prasanga, into English. I've told this story before. I love this story. That he was a professor in philosophy, teaching Upanishads to the class, and he was saying that no one can really understand these very abstruse ideas unless they renounce everything. Only a sannyasi can. So one student said, well, what about you? You're teaching us these things, and you have your family and everything. And that was enough. He said, yes, you're right. And he left everything behind and came and in those days, the age didn't matter too much, and joined the order. I don't know how old he was at that time, but he became one of the most highly respected monks of our order. Yeah. So jnanis or bhaktas, anybody, they can be householders also. According to Vedanta, now again, just a reminder, that means Advaita Vedanta in Sri Ramakrishna's mind, or according to Upanishads, or according to Shankaracharya. This is the code word that he uses. According to Vedanta, the waking state too is unreal. So that means just as the dream state is unreal, the waking state is unreal. Now, this word unreal, this is the real key. What do we mean by unreal? Do we mean dreamlike? Okay, everybody, we can all admit it's dreamlike. Do we mean literally like a dream? We have a dream, we wake up, everything is gone. Whatever happened there has no consequence whatsoever. There's no results from it. There were no other people in it. Does it mean that literally? I don't think so. There may be some who will take it that way, but in any event, the attitude of the jnani is that there's something hazy and dreamlike about this world, and we all feel it at times. And when we get older and we look back at a whole lifetime, we think, did any of this really happen? I remember it was a very strong experience, feeling that I had. I took a very low, my first trip to India. I got on a plane and I flew to Iceland and England, Icelandic Airlines. And I traveled all through Europe and North Africa and all the exotic places and different foods and languages and everything in India. And a long time there, I was gone over a year and a half. I came back, I got off the plane in New York, and I see everything's the same. And it really occurred to me, did the last year and a half really happen? And it was almost like I had to open my bag and see, is there any sign? I had to look at the calendar. Is it really a year and a half later, or was it that I fall asleep on the plane and get off, and that was the whole thing? A very strong feeling like that. Most of the time I was alone, who to verify all these experiences and everything. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that I feel that I dreamt the whole thing. I know I didn't dream it, but it has a dreamlike quality to it. And I think at the very end of life, when we look back, we'll also feel the dreamlike quality. Did all these things really happen? And how seriously I took everything. And now I see that nothing matters too much, that I'll leave this world. And then it's really like the end of a long dream when we reach the very end. Anyhow, this is the attitude of the Jnani, that whether they translate this into a metaphysical principle, that is Jagat Mithya, or whether it's just a feeling that why get engaged in things too much, that all relationships come to an end. Our story of Narada and going for the glass of water and everything. 12 years passed, and now it's just a half hour. So we can feel that. Oh, life has passed. How long did it take? It just goes by like that. So it has a dreamlike quality. I think we can all agree to that.
Is it dream or is it feels more like scripted?
It's another attitude. That those who like the Leela idea and all of that, they may feel that it's scripted, that we got thrown into the middle of a play and everything. These are attitudes. Again, there'll be some who won't say it's an attitude. This is the reality. But we don't have to make that decision. Is it really scripted? Do I have any free will at all? Am I just following out this? Everything is like Arjuna told, you've already killed all these people. Just you have to be an instrument and do all of this. I've already done it. Now, is it really like that, or was it just in the case of Arjuna? Is it like that for everybody? These are different types of spiritual attitudes. Some are very helpful to give us a sense of detachment. Some are not so helpful. We have to decide. If it means I'm not going to make an effort or do anything, everything is scripted, then it's not helpful. So we have to analyze what are the strong points, what are the helpful points to a spiritual attitude. Spiritual attitude. This is that Jaman Bhav and Nilab. This is the gain is according to whatever spiritual mood, attitude. In this translation, they say according to our feeling of love, but it really means the bhava here, that whatever our attitude is, of course, loving attitude, we can say. If we really love someone deeply, then we'll have some gain from it. We'll become less selfish and everything. So, Sri Ramakrishna, Sara Bhava Maya, he was the embodiment of all different moods and attitudes. He appreciated all of them. He knew that some were suited to some people and some to others. Now, Sri Ramakrishna is going to tell a story that he tells in several places, but with a twist here. The twist is that he's not going to talk about the Jnani whose son had died. We're just going to get kind of half of the story. Once a woodcutter lay dreaming when someone woke him up. Greatly annoyed, he said, "Why have you disturbed my sleep? I was dreaming that I was a king and the father of 7 children. The princes were becoming well versed in letters and military arts. I was secure on my throne and ruled over my subjects. Why have you demolished my world of joy?" "But that was a mere dream," said the other man. "Why should that bother you?" "Fool," said the woodcutter, "you don't understand. My becoming a king in the dream was just as real as my being a woodcutter. If being a woodcutter is real, then being a king in a dream is also real." So we have the 2 different ways of putting it. This dream is just as real as the waking state. The waking state is just as unreal as the dream. Depending on how we like to look at things. Yeah. The very curious thing, when I was a philosophy student in college and knew nothing about Vedanta, nothing, any of this, the first paper that he wrote was The Reality of Dreams. I really got just fascinated with this idea of how real the dream seems while we're in the midst of it, and how we wake up and just dismiss it. How easily we say, "Oh, it was just a dream," when at the time it was life and death. It was especially a nightmare, huh? How real it is. Yeah, something more real than this waking state. So anyhow, there's ideas.
Sometimes
Yeah.
feel that the difference between dream and reality is only this, that reality is corroborated by multiple people. This could also be a collective dream. And dream is individual always. Your dream is always individual.
This is how we understand it normally. Normally we understand, and most of Vedanta accepts that distinction, that dream is something private, that we experience it ourselves, and that this is something shared. This is public. We all have our own take on it, and we see things differently. But the assumption is that each and every one of us has individual consciousness and is more or less in the same dwelling space and hearing the same words. Some will say, "What nonsense!" Some will say, "Ah, how intelligent." But the same words. That part is shared. This is the assumption. We don't know. I could wake up and say, "Oh, that was a dream." Look at me. I was talking about this idea of shared consciousness, and I was the only one there. Yeah.
Yeah, but in the dream, the people I dream of, they
Yeah.
will have their individual consciousness.
It seems like it, but if I dream about you and I wake up and I say, "Why did you say that to me in the dream last night?" I say, "I didn't say anything. What do you mean? I had my own dream." Yeah. So, but we don't know. This is anumeya. This is anumana. That it's really just inference that I assume that you all actually have consciousness and are can hear me. I don't know. I don't know. I can't step into your head and know what you're hearing and seeing and everything. So this is also a type of metaphysical assumption, anumana. But we have to live by this. Even in the gospel, there's one place where somebody says this is also faith, a question of vishwas, a question of faith that the things that we see are real, something like that. We can't verify these things. It could be a dream.
Now, there is one more distinction in the dream. As Swami is saying that the other people also have consciousness, but they never come back to negate our dream.
Yeah.
In this dream, people.
The other main difference is we wake up from a dream and we remember the dream, and we see ourselves lying in bed. Yeah. In the dream, we're not aware of that waking state. Generally, we become aware of it when we wake up again. Yeah. So one takes place within the other. This is the feeling of it. Anyhow, we don't have to, as I say, I'm not much in favor of taking these spiritual attitudes and trying to come with some very fixed metaphysical doctrine based on these ideas. This world is like a dream. Now, we say sometimes that this is the dream of Brahma or Brahman, something, this is the dream. But everybody within this dream has awareness and consciousness, something. In Brahman dreaming all this, what is it? In Maya dreaming all this dream. Huh? Swamiji's poem. Yeah. Yeah. So just this idea that it seems like a long dream, this whole world, that means we're getting some detachment from it. We're not taking anything too seriously, that we're not going to let it affect us. We know that there's something higher and deeper. Ramakrishna always talked about jnana. Was this why the master described the state of the jnani? Now he proceeded to describe the state of the vijnani. Now, I don't know exactly what the difference is, because in the beginning, talking about Shankaracharya and that ego of knowledge and everything, that the ego of knowledge for Shankaracharya is the state of vijnana. But anyhow, he seems to be going back that this, if we take the example of this woodcutter, he's obviously not a God relay soul, but he has the attitude of the jnani. So we can say that he's referring to that. Master, jnana is the realization of self through the process of neti, not this, not this. Now, sometimes Thakur talks about jnana as samadhi, almost identifying with going to the roof and losing our individuality and everything. So by jnana is the realization of self through the process of neti, not this, not this. So that means leaving the steps behind and getting to the roof. What is this, not this, not this? I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the senses, all of that. that we eliminate all of these extraneous things, superficial things, and we find what's left is pure awareness. So this is that path of 1880. One goes into samadhi through this process of elimination and realizes the Atman. But vijnana means knowledge with a greater fullness. Now, Sri Ramakrishna is going to emphasize here the state of vijnana of the bhakta, more so of the bhakta, who talk to God and sing and laugh and dance, all of that. Some have heard of milk, some have seen milk, and some have drunk milk. He who has merely heard of it is ignorant. He who has seen it is a jnani, but he who has drunk it has vijnana, that is to say, a fuller knowledge of it. After having the vision of God, one talks to him as if he were an intimate relative. That is vijnana. Now, this is generally what Sri Ramakrishna refers to as the ego of devotion. So here he's really not making a very big distinction between the state of vijnana for the jnani and for the bhakta. The attitude will be a little bit different, but still it will be that state of the jivan mukti state, the freedom while living. Now he'll go back to this 1880 business. First of all, you must discriminate following the method of 1880. He is not the five elements. Now he, we can say I. We're trying to find that ultimate reality. If we think of it as Atman, maybe we'll say I. If we think of Brahman, maybe say he. But this is the type of distinction that we make before realization. Afterwards, that's the whole point. No distinction between I and he. And he puts it this way: he is not the five elements, nor the sense organs, nor the mind, nor the intelligence, nor the ego. He's beyond all these cosmic principles. You want to climb to the roof, then you must eliminate and leave behind all the steps one by one. The steps are by no means the roof. But after reaching the roof, you find that the steps are made of the same materials, brick, lime, and brick dust as the roof. It is the Supreme Brahman that has become the universe and its living beings and the 24 cosmic principles. Now, I've mentioned many times that Thakur uses different language at different times. We may say the Supreme Brahman can't become anything. It doesn't undergo any change. Technically, that's true. Very often, Sri Ramakrishna will say that it's the Shakti that becomes this whole universe, or Divine Mother. Divine Mother, that means this Shakti aspect of Brahman itself. So for the Supreme Brahman for Sri Ramakrishna always includes this Saguna Brahman as well as Nirguna Brahman. We have to accept that because there's no doctrine, of course there are some, but this Brahman really transforms itself into the universe. There's one school, Kevala Advaita, that I think this is their idea, that Brahman becomes the universe. We even read in these old hymns, Purusha Suktam and everything, that a certain percentage of Brahman becomes the universe. Yeah. And this is not to be taken too literally, I don't think. So that which is Atman has become the five elements. See, first starts by asking about Brahman, he, and now Atman, because there's no distinction at that point, Atman and Brahman. You may ask why the earth is so hard if it has come out of Atman. All is possible through the will of God. Don't you see that bone and flesh are made from blood and semen? How hard sea foam becomes. The sea foam, Thakur uses this in another place. The Divine Mother, she collects these little things and keeps in a little box with coins and things. It's sea foam. It says there's some idea that there's a certain bone found on the seashore, cuttle bone. So popular belief is that it is hardened to foam. Some folk believe. After attaining vijnana, one can live in the world as well. Now, what does that mean to live in the world? Of course, one has to live in the world. Where else will one live? Yeah. But in a family setting, possibly, keeping the job. Thakur says in one place, if a clerk gets sent to jail and then he's released from jail, what will he do? Will he go about singing and dancing in the street? He'll go back to being a clerk. Yeah. There's a famous Zen statement. Before realization, what is it? Chopping wood and carrying water. After realization, chopping wood and carrying water. Yeah. That one can do the same thing. Because at that point, it doesn't matter. Mind is already turned into gold. It doesn't matter what one does after that. I don't know if he was really a realized soul, but they always point to Nisargadatta, that he remained a simple BD salesman. There's a little shop in Mumbai, and people would come and sit there and everything. So after attaining Vijnana, one can live in the world as well. Then one clearly realizes that God himself has become the universe and all living beings, that he is not outside the world. So the Sarvam Kalavidam Brahma, all this is indeed Brahman, for Sri Ramakrishna is a statement that the Vijnani will make. Now, can we start out with that idea? Does everyone have to do the 1880? No. There's a better iti. And I think in the great master, Swami Sharananda, talks about that we try to see the divine in everything from the very outset. Try to see everything as a manifestation of the divine. This is also a type of spiritual attitude. To Pran Krishna, the fact is that one must have the spiritual eye. Divya Chakshu, this is, we read in Gita, that when Arjuna wanted to see the divine universal form, that Sri Krishna said, well, you can't see it with this ordinary eyesight. Let me give you this divine eyesight. You will develop that eye as soon as your mind becomes pure. Not as soon as we become very intelligent or we can discriminate and do all of that. When the mind becomes hard and mind become pure. Take, for instance, the Kumari Puja. Now, this is, I don't like this translation at all. I worship the Virgin. It sounds so odd. The Kumari Puja means that a young girl, she'd be 5, 6, 7, something that is traditionally worshipped as the form of the Divine Mother. The girl, to be sure, had all her human imperfections. Hagamota me. It's a very interesting thing. I picture it as a very small little girl who has to wear a diaper. She may even soil herself, but still can see the Divine Mother in her. So here it says she had all her human imperfections. These are not really human imperfections. These are natural things that belong to a human being. That means the humanness is there. We think that human and divine don't go together. But he's saying even in a young girl who may not even be potty trained at that point and may soil herself and all of that, still she can be worshipped as the Divine Mother. Still, I regarded her as the Divine Mother herself. On one side is the wife, and on the other, the son. Love is bestowed on both, but in different ways. Therefore, it comes to this, that everything depends upon the mind. Moni Ekota, another statement that Thakur makes over and over and over again. Everything is a question of our attitude, spiritual attitude. The pure mind acquires a new attitude. Through that mind, one sees God in this world. Therefore, one needs spiritual discipline. We need purity of heart. How do we do it? Spiritual discipline, spiritual practice, and behavior modification. This is a very fancy term, huh? They use that in the psychology or something. Of people who have some addictive problems and things, behavior modification. We change the way we do things. If we want to change the way we think, we have to change the way we do things sometimes also. Yes, spiritual discipline is necessary. Now, we say all of the time, whenever we get to this comedy content and everything, that, Thakur's talking this way because he's talking to men. If he's talking to women, he'll also tell the other side of the story. Here he's going to tell the other side of the story. This, I think, is the only place. Maybe there's another place I don't remember. One of the very few places where he'll talk from the point of view of the women also. This is good. I like this. He says, you should know that a man becomes easily attached to a woman. A woman naturally loves a man, and a man also naturally loves a woman. Therefore, both fall speedily from their spiritual ideals. So whenever we think that he's only saying that, the presence of women will draw the mind of a man away, same thing. And of course, now, of course, we have to say men and men and women also, because everyone has a different orientation. We know that this is also something natural. Anyhow, the point is that the immature mind, or the mind that's just starting out in spiritual life, is very susceptible to environment and those things which will bring back old samskaras and fill the mind with unnecessary thoughts and temptations and desires and everything. Best to really do that. Be very careful about the company we keep, the things we do, all of that. This is putting the hedge around the small plant. But it also must be said that there is a great advantage in leading the life of a householder. In case of urgent necessity, a man may live with his wife. The M smiles. And he says, well, M, why are you smiling? M to himself, the master makes this much allowance for householders, since they cannot renounce everything. Is complete and absolute continence impossible for a householder? This was always M's, and was really torn with this idea. He had a tremendous desire to renounce everything, but Thakur wanted him to live like a householder, and even after all of this, he had children. I think at least one more, one daughter or something, after meeting Sri Ramakrishna. And Thakur even said, go home and after staying for a long time with him, that long period, go and have some enjoyment with your wife sometime also. He even it comes up here, even to Rakal. He said that. Really scolded him. Yeah, aren't you embarrassed to live like that? Yeah. That was during that long stay in Dakshineshwar. Yeah. The Hatha yogi who had been living in the Panchavati entered the room. He was in the habit of taking milk and opium. He did not eat rice or other food and had no money to buy the milk and opium. The master had talked with him in the Panchavati. The Hatha yogi had told Rakal to ask the master to make some provisions for him, and Sri Ramakrishna had promised to speak about it to the visitors from Calcutta. He wasn't very happy about speaking about it, but he said he would do it, so he did it, knowing that no one would be interested. Hatha yogi to the master. Well, what did you say to Rakal about me? Master, I said that I would ask some rich visitors to help you, but then to Pran Krishna, you perhaps do not like these yogis. Pran Krishna remained silent. The Hatha yogi left the room, and the conversation went on. Master, to Pran Krishna and the others, if a man leads a householder's life, he must have unflagging devotion to truth. Now, this is also curious. Everybody needs it. Why the householder especially? Challenges are more. That in order to make a living, sometimes in the work that they have to do, to keep smooth relations with relatives, all sorts of things, that the temptation is there to sometimes just fudge a little bit on the truth. Compromise, yeah. Sometimes it's necessary a little bit. If it becomes too much, then look for another job.
Yeah. Maybe that applies to anybody who lives in a community.
Could be. It's the same thing we can say for monks who live in an ashram and everything. that we also need that. But we all know about truthfulness, that it doesn't mean that we say things that will hurt somebody's feelings, that we have to bring in some kindness and everything, and along with that. God can be realized through truth alone. Formerly, I was very particular about telling the truth, though now my zeal has abated a little. If I said, I shall bathe, then I would get into the water of the Ganges, recite the mantra, and sprinkle a little water over my head. But still, there would remain some doubt in me as to whether my bath was complete. Once I went to Ram's house in Calcutta. I happened to say, I shall not take any luchi. When I sat down for the meal, I felt hungry, but I'd said I would not eat the luchi, so I had to fill my stomach with sweets. all laugh. But my zeal for truthfulness has abated a little now. The word he uses is bai. We know the shuchi bai. It means it's fanaticism. It's not just zeal. He himself realizes or thinks now that perhaps I was a little too fanatical about things. You know how he had to go to Jaddu Malik's house in the dead of night and stick his foot inside and all of these things. So my zeal for truthfulness has abated a little now. Once I said I would go to the pine grove. Now, you all know what it means to go to the pine grove. Yeah, poop. Answer the call of nature. Now, why he had to go to the pine grove? They had latrines and things there. No, I was thinking about this because of our Roshik Method. That was his job to clean the latrines. He being a great devotee, he had a vision of Thakur at the end. Anyhow, Thakur used to go to the pine grove. So once I said I would go to the pine grove, but then I felt I had no particular urge to go. What was to be done? I asked Ram about it. This is not a Ramchandra. This is Ram Chatterjee. He was one of the priests in the Radhakanta temple. I asked Ram about it. He said, I didn't have to go. He would listen to anybody. Who is this Ram Chatterjee? He's nobody. Then I reasoned to myself, well, everyone is Narayana. So Ram too is Narayana. Why shouldn't I listen to him? The elephant is Narayana, no doubt, but the Mahut is Narayana too. Since the Mahut asked me not to go near the elephant, then why shouldn't I obey him? Through reasoning like this, my zeal for truthfulness is slightly less strong now than before. And we can easily also lose our zeal for truthfulness. Okay, we'll stop here. He gets to another thing about a new change coming over him about seeing God in man. That's a very important idea. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukamvadhudavikraham Vai Yeshavataram Parameshamedhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namah. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. I think most of you know that Sunday we have our memorial service for Swami Brahmarupanandaji. Those of you who are watching this from out of town, who can't come here, can watch it on your computer screen. It'll be live streamed and then it'll be recorded and on YouTube. So you can just go to our website and see. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay. End stream. Now.